Hi, this is Paul Bells Templeman, the stated clerk for the Presbytery of the Cascades, and I want to provide some orientation for the session records review for the year 2024. So many of you have not done a session records review before. You're perhaps a new clerk, and so I want to give you a little bit of information on how this works and maybe to start, why we do it. So why? Well, each council, the Book of Order says, shall review lower councils within its jurisdiction. So to do that, we determine whether the proceedings have been correctly recorded in accordance with the Constitution, etc., faithful to the mission of the whole church. So proceedings here is important. That's the things you're going to find in the minutes. And the higher bodies in the Presbyterian Church are different councils. So the highest council in the Presbyterian Church is the General Assembly. Next highest is the Synod. Then there's the Presbytery. And then there are sessions, which sessions are the councils of congregations. So the Presbytery as a council is responsible to review the minutes of lower councils or sessions. So, right, the higher council for a session is the Presbytery. Who is the Presbytery? Well, members of congregations, including clerks, are part of the Presbytery. And so in a presbytery the size of Cascades with 88 congregations, rather than creating a minutes review committee of, say, 4 or 5 people, we say, well, with 88 congregations to review, let's have all the clerks work together to review the minutes of other congregations or other sessions. And that's not uncommon in the Presbyterian Church. Many other presbyteries do that as well. So when you get your notice that, hey, it's time to review the minutes, which you've received, you say, well, what minutes need review? The last year, but when does that start? When does it end? Well, if you find a sticker in your minutes book, find the sticker that's the closest to the back, because there's probably one for every year, or there could be one for every year. And so you'll see on the screen the sticker for the Astoria Church, and it says from September 2022 to August 2023. So we know that all the minutes before August 2023 have been reviewed, and the only minutes needing to be reviewed are those starting in, say, September of 2023. Now, how far do you go? You go all the minutes that have been approved by October 1st, 2024. So most likely your September presbytery minutes, or sorry, September session minutes will not have been approved in time for that October 1 deadline. But if you meet in September, you've probably approved the August minutes, or maybe you didn't meet in August, so you approved the July minutes or something like that. So that's how you determine what minutes need review. Of course, you might say, well, I don't have the sticker. If you don't have a sticker, you can email me or email Sherry or call us, and we can find that information for you. All right. So what does the review look like? Where do you start? Well, you start with your own minutes. You figure out where to start. Perhaps you start in September of 2023 because the sticker, or we said the minutes were reviewed through August, and you move forward. So I'm going to show you, as you look at your minutes, you're going to do something like this. You'll take the session record review checklist, which we sent you, and you fill this out for your own minutes, and then you're going to send it to us, and we're going to send it out with your minutes to your partner, the person who's going to review your minutes. So this is going to help them. And you're going to go through your minutes, and you're usually on the first page and the last page of each set of minutes, your September minutes, your October minutes, your November minutes, and so on. And most of this is on the front page: the location of the meeting, the date and time of the meeting, the names of the people moderating, and the clerk, and the elders who are present, maybe also the elders who are absent if you keep roll that way. The type of meeting: was it a stated meeting or a regular meeting? Stated and regular are the same. Or was it a special meeting, a called meeting, a meeting we weren't anticipating, but business came up, we needed to have a meeting, so we called that meeting, and it was a special meeting. Was the meeting opened and closed with prayer? And then the notation of approval of minutes, I'll show you that in a moment, as well as were the minutes signed by the clerk, and action taken on motions. So let's look over those things right now. We have here some sample minutes. And if you recall the checklist we had, that first paragraph has a lot of what we're looking for, or the first two paragraphs, right? We've got the name of the church here. We've got that it met at 7 p.m. So that's the time on the date, January 15th. Where it was, the fellowship hall of the church. We know that church would have been Northminster Presbyterian Church. We can deduce that. We say that the moderator and the clerk of session were present. If, for instance, the clerk is absent, you put something like this: Roger Santana was elected clerk pro tem for the meeting. We also have that the meeting was opened with prayer. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know if that's helpful. And then below that is present at the meeting were those present. Some people have that in more of a like table form, and that's fine too. We have that the minutes were approved. I often bold actions that were taken, or motions that were approved, or motions that were made, I should say. If we go to the bottom of the minutes, we can see that yes, the meeting was adjourned with prayer at 8:45, so we know what time the meeting ended. It has the clerk's signature. And it also has this: at the next meeting, these minutes were approved. And some people think this is redundant because you just go to the next meeting minutes and find out that they were approved. But here we know that the minutes we have in this book or online in this file are the approved minutes of the January meeting that were approved in February. And there are my initials. In terms of motions, you just want to make sure the motions look complete. You know, it's like, I've seen where people say the consent agenda was approved. Well, okay, that's great. The consent agenda was approved, but what was on the consent agenda? So let me just show you. Here's a sample consent agenda. Without objection, right? Here we are. The following items were adopted in gross, meaning all of them were adopted at once on the consent agenda. We know what was on there. It was about serving communion for the next year. And it was about creating an administrative commission to approve statistical reports. Generally, you don't need to have motions. You just say parenthetically a motion or state. You write that after amendment, the motion was passed, or after debate and amendment, or discussion and amendment, the motion was passed. The one exception is if a motion carries over to another meeting. So in this worship committee report, we say that there was a motion that this handbells be purchased for $6,000. And then we see that there was an amendment. The amendment was not to exceed, so that it might read not to exceed $6,000. That amendment hasn't been adopted yet because someone said we're going to postpone this whole thing till the next month. So in order that we know that what was postponed, because it comes back to the meeting exactly as it was when we left it, we note that there was an amendment. So at the next meeting we say, oh, we're going to start with the amendment, right? Because you can see that motion was postponed. So, you know, it's hard to know what you're going to find with motions, but do look through and see if the motions, it's clear that a motion was made and that something happened. The motion was either, you know, approved, was postponed, or here this motion was lost. Even though the motion was lost, it was defeated because the motion was made and it was voted on. It needed to be noted in the minutes. Okay, so that's the minutes. Well, the first part of the minutes. We need to go back and look at the other part of the minutes. The next pass through the minutes, if you will, is to think about things like, when were the ordination and installation dates for the elders and deacons? And you know, oh, well, we have a congregational meeting in January. We generally install them in February or March. Let me look in the February or the March or the April minutes that will tell me when those folks were installed. And it says, note the month and the page number. So some people, the month isn't as critical because their minutes started at page 1, say in 1920, and now it's 2024, and they're on page 1,500. But other groups, when they number their minutes, they say page 1, you know, January 2024, page 1, February 2024, page 1 of 4, page 2 of 4, etc. So then you just say, well, the ordination and installation dates, they were ordained in February and installed in February. And in the March meeting on page 2, we note that fact. We note the election of ruling elder commissioners to attend presbytery and their terms. Well, we did that back in August or September. So you can note that, or maybe you say, we didn't do it. Maybe it's not applicable. Maybe you didn't elect a clerk of session because you elected a clerk of session in 2022 for a 4-year term. And so it's 2024, they're in the middle of that. Same thing with a treasurer. Authorization for communion and or baptism. If communion is authorized in your minutes, that's great. If for some reason it was in your bylaws might say communion is monthly, then it wouldn't be in the minutes, right? It's already in the bylaws. You could make a note to that effect. Member transfers, names and locations, examination of newly elected church officers. If you don't know what that is, we'll have to do some work on that. We've adopted a budget. You should have adopted a budget as a session. When was that? As your fiscal year is in July, you're probably going to look in your June minutes, maybe in your July minutes. But if it's a fiscal year ends December 31, you're going to be looking in December, January, something like that. And on and on. That's the session minutes. You also will have congregation minutes. Congregation minutes are kept with the session minutes, even though the congregation is in a way its own entity, related as it is to the session. And in the congregational meeting minutes, you want to see the election of elders and deacons and perhaps trustees, if your church does that. The approval of terms of call for installed pastors, and note in number 18, if you go up above, if it's temporary pastor, meaning interim or stated supply or temporary supply, those are approved by the session. Election of nominating committee members, and the minutes are signed by the clerk. Some congregations also ask the moderator to sign those minutes. That is not our requirement, but some churches do that. And then you basically fill out this form, and when finished, you email it along with your minutes to Sherry at office@poctc.org. In addition to your minutes, we also want to do a review of your registers and your rolls. And so this is a reconciliation of the registers and rolls with the minutes. Because, for instance, someone joins the church and they join at a meeting in February, and you forget to put it in the rolls after the meeting. And then it never happens. So can you imagine if we don't do this every year? At some point, 7 years from now, someone says, but I joined the church. I think it was in 2015, 2016. I don't remember, but I know I joined. We don't have a record of it. Well, hopefully, if we can figure this out, on an annual basis, we can keep our minutes more up to date. And then we don't have to, scratch our head about these things. So we're looking for, in the minutes, we go through, were members received or dismissed? Where is that? What month is that in? And then that's the page in the minutes. Maybe we start in the register. And then we look in the register, so we look in the register. Oh, it says we have 4 members. Do we find them in the minutes? Yes, we did. We actually found 6 members in the minutes and only 4 in the register. Well, we can update the register in that. Same thing with the that's the rolls. The members are in the rolls. The baptisms are in the baptismal register. So the same idea, right? We said someone was going to get baptized. Did they get baptized? Is it recorded? Hopefully. Necrology is related again to the membership roster. That probably should go above baptisms now that I see that. And then, elders and deacons, when elders and deacons are elected, we need to make sure that they are in that register of officers. So this form we don't send to the other clerk, but it is really helpful as an exercise to do, just to make sure that all the records jibe. Some people have said, hey, Paul, why if someone dies, we just remove them from the rolls? Why does that need to be in the minutes? The reason it needs to be in the minutes is because in the Presbyterian Church, it says the session shall remove members from the rolls when they die or they are dismissed, or there's a variety of things. So the session needs to take some sort of action to remove them from the rolls, even though they have, died. That doesn't mean they have to make a motion. The clerk can just say, here's a list of 3 people who died in the last month. And if no one objects, then they're removed. All right. So that's what you fill out before the records review. Before you send your minutes, copies of your minutes, PDFs, Word docs, whatever, to Sherry, and we put those together for your partner. Then you're going to get minutes from your partner. And when you get those minutes from your partner, you're going to want to read through them, and you'll have their their sheet where they note things and where things are in the minutes, and you can go and look and make sure those are there. When I read minutes, I think of it sort of like an audit. An auditor doesn't do an exhaustive look at every financial transaction if it's a financial audit. So similarly, with minutes, I might say, well, I'm going to read the September, and then you have 14 sets of minutes here. Wow, I'm just going to read 4 of them and just see how they read and just get an impression. At that point, then I have a form to fill out for you. So let me share that form with you. So here is the report of the review of session records. So you're reading over your partner church's minutes, and you can just write down the name of the congregation, the city, and what minutes you're reviewing. So you look at the first ones to the last ones, whether there was an annual financial review, and when the session accepted that financial review. And finally, any helpful tips or comments for the clerk, especially on any departures from minute standards. So you might say, hey, I noticed that you didn't sign the minutes from such and such a month. And just to be clear, if you're getting electronic copies of minutes, oftentimes people have hard copies and they've signed them. So don't presume they didn't sign them. Maybe just ask, did you sign the hard copies or something? Because usually they have. But oh, I noticed there was a motion on page 17 or page 4 of the April minutes where it's not clear, did that motion pass or not? Or it's not clear what the motion was. You say there was a motion that was adopted. What was it? That might be helpful for folks to receive at that point. We do say here, if you're reading the minutes in person, and there is an option to read in person, don't sign the minutes book. That was an older practice. Instead, I sign the minutes book in terms of I sign a sticker that goes in the minutes book. So that's kind of the traditional way of doing that. You put your name here and what church you're from and the date of the reading, and you return that form to Sherry at office@potc.life. So in a nutshell, that's how we review minutes. And if you do have any comments or questions, you can always reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer those. All the best with this important process.